On this Thursday night, Ticketmaster and Live Nation accused of suffocating the competition.
The Justice Department filed this lawsuit on behalf of fans.
The mission to break up what's being called an illegal monopoly. A warning to Atlantic Canadians about hurricanes.
This season is looking to be an extraordinary one.
The worries about insurance. Terrifying moments in Mexico. What caused this deadly stage collapse? And jumping on the Oilers bandwagon.
I am a huge concern, but at this point, we're rallying behind the Canadian team.
Is Edmonton now Canada's team?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. If you've ever bought a ticket to an event or a concert, you have used Ticketmaster. Its parent company, Live Nation, dominates the market when it comes to concert promotion, tickets, and venues. And now the U.S. Justice Department says Live Nation is too big.
That Live Nation has illegally monopolized markets across the live concert industry in the United States for far too long. It is time to break it up.
The American Attorney General and a number of states have launched a lawsuit accusing Live Nation of illegally suppressing competition, which has driven up ticket prices and led to poor customer service. Eric Sorensen has our top story on a legal battle that could reshape the multi-billion-dollar live entertainment industry.
When millions of people could not buy Taylor Swift Eras Tour tickets 2 years ago, public anger coalesced around Ticketmaster and its dominance in ticket sales. Ask Swifties like Halifax's Elizabeth O'Hanley about the prices she ultimately faced.
They're $3,600, so unless you're willing to pay that much, you're just not going to get a ticket.
Now, the U.S. Justice Department and most U.S. states are suing the parent company, Live Nation.
Live Nation relies on unlawful, anti-competitive conduct to exercise its monopolistic control over the live events industry in the United States.
Washington says Live Nation Ticketmaster controls 80% of primary ticketing at major U.S. concert venues, manages more than 400 artists, and controls the majority of large concert venues and promotions in the U.S. And then there is Ticketmaster's additional fees.
Ticketing fees, service fees, convenience fees.
And the list just went on and on.
Per order fees, handling fees.
It is a climb down for the U.S. government, which allowed Live Nation to merge with Ticketmaster in 2010. Critics say the government has no choice but to bring more competition into the live concert industry.
The engine of lower prices is competition. Competition is something that's been absent in this area for decades now. Really, the only way to resolve it is to break up the company.
Ticketmaster learned valuable lessons from this on sale.
Live Nation's president told a congressional hearing last year that bots and scalpers were responsible for high ticket prices. In a statement, Live Nation says this lawsuit won't reduce ticket prices or service fees and distracts from real solutions that would decrease prices and protect fans. What could it mean in Canada?
We always say more competition is more choices for Canadians. So obviously we're going to be looking at what has been announced in the United States.
Any investigation in this country would come from the Competition Bureau, which reached a settlement with Live Nation over extra fees in 2018.
They are most likely watching very carefully what the Americans are doing, and then they would have to decide whether they think that they would like to investigate it.
The case follows years of backlash from concert goers. It could be many more years before it's settled. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
There is a dire warning tonight about the Atlantic hurricane season, which is about to hit. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the U.S. forecasts not only more hurricanes than ever, but says they will be unusually intense, both along the U.S. and Canadian Atlantic coast. Jackson Proskow takes us through what's predicted and how those with property in storm-prone areas may pay a price in more ways than one.
Hurricane Otis seemed to come out of nowhere, decimating Acapulco after rapidly intensifying from a Category 1 to a Category 5 in a single day. That nightmare scenario could happen again and again this year.
This season is looking to be an extraordinary one in a number of ways.
Never have American forecasters been so certain of a violent hurricane season, calling for 8 to 13 hurricanes with 4 to 7 major storms of Category 3 or higher. all fueled by record warm ocean temperatures in the Atlantic.
They are equivalent to what we would normally see during August, and they are dramatically warmer than in 2005.
2005 was the year that brought Katrina.
Again, the rescue worker giving the thumbs up.
Which killed over 1,800 people and caused upwards of $125 billion in damage. Since then, climate change has supercharged the ingredients for hurricanes.
The most intense hurricanes will become more intense. That was a projection of the last IPCC report. At the same time, the rainfall associated with hurricanes is also projected to become more intense.
Canada's Hurricane Centre warns storms could also be stronger as they make their way north, like 2022's Hurricane Fiona, the costliest weather event in Atlantic Canadian history. The risks haven't stopped people from flocking to the coast. Places like Florida have witnessed a population boom in the last decade, even as some home insurance providers pull out entirely.
So some insurers are cutting back, and that's making it challenging for some homeowners to find coverage in these high-risk states.
That will all but certainly raise the costs of the next major hurricane to make landfall, making the dire forecast a wake-up call about our vulnerability to more frequent and more extreme storms. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
The president of France says he will not force through controversial electoral reforms that have sparked deadly riots in the French Pacific territory of New Caledonia. Emmanuel Macron flew to the main island to deliver his message in person, hoping it will restore calm. Mike Armstrong reports.
After 24 hours in the air, traveling from France to New Caledonia in the South Pacific, one of the first things the French president did was take to the air again. Emmanuel Macron flew over some of the areas hit by riots and roadblocks. He then promised that within days, peace would be restored.
Chaque quartier, chaque rond-point, chaque barrage.
Macron says police will go street by street, roadblock by roadblock, and reopen every neighborhood. The deadly riots that have gripped New Caledonia for 11 days have left hundreds of people injured and at least 6 dead. Major thoroughfares are still closed, blocked by protesters. Well, part of Macron's message Thursday was about toughness. He's moved in more than 1,300 extra police officers and soldiers, as well as extra judges. More than 260 people have been arrested. But the other side of Macron's visit is one of diplomacy. He spent much of the day meeting with political leaders from both sides of the conflict with, he said, a spirit of openness.
Le scrutin est clos.
Macron now says he will delay the controversial voting reforms adopted last week in Paris. They would expand the electoral rolls in New Caledonia, making anyone who's lived in the territory for at least 10 years eligible to vote. That change is strongly opposed by indigenous groups who say it would dilute their political power. The Kanak people make up just over 40% of New Caledonia's population.
The government and the ministers, they're bringing back the war here in New Caledonia, the civil war here.
Now, Macron's trip is meant to quell tensions, but he's also firmly admitting that in the coming days there will be massive police operations. He says the state of emergency won't be lifted until the barricades are moved out and the extra police may be sticking around long after that. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv, was pounded by Russian missiles today. At least 7 people were killed. The attack destroyed a large printing facility which publishes about 1/3 of Ukraine's books. Troops are struggling to hold off Russian soldiers fighting an intense cross-border offensive. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the attack shows Russia is taking advantage of Ukraine's lack of air defenses, and he begged world leaders to be more decisive with military support. The U.S. is expected to announce another $275 million in ammunition and artillery for Ukraine tomorrow. It will be the 4th installment of military aid since Congress passed the long-delayed foreign defense bill last month. Here in Canada, the federal government is planning an important change to how second-generation children born abroad to Canadian citizens gain citizenship. Former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper's government changed a law so that Canadian parents who were born abroad could not pass down their citizenship unless their child was born in Canada. Mackenzie Gray explains what's changing and its potential impact.
You'll see if you examine the budget.
A new move from Ottawa to bring home so-called lost Canadians.
There's no doubt that Canadian citizenship is highly valued and recognized around the world. We want a citizenship to be fair, accessible, with clear and transparent rules.
Currently, if someone is born to a Canadian outside the country, they couldn't pass on their Canadian passport to their child if that child was also born abroad. With the change, citizenship could be passed along, as long as their parents spent a total of 3 years in Canada before their kid was born or adopted.
I love you guys.
That will allow the kids of Boston resident Catherine Burton to become Canadian.
They want to come here, they want to learn language, they want to go to school here, they want to do so many things here because this is what they consider home.
The Liberals forced to make the modification after an Ontario Superior Court ruled the law limiting citizenship was unconstitutional.
It will be the first time that the Citizenship Act is actually charter compliant.
The old rules imposed in 2009 by the then Conservative government after they spent $94 million repatriating around 14,000 Canadian citizens during the war in Lebanon, evacuees many in the Harper government viewed as Canadians of convenience. A part of an estimated group of over 4 million Canadian citizens living outside the country who can access Canadian social services like healthcare and reduced university tuition while paying little to no taxes.
We don't have the same system as in the US where if you're an American citizen, regardless of where you live, you have to fill your income tax report every year.
The immigration minister was unable to say how many new Canadians there would be from these changes, but Donna, a report released from the Senate estimated 2 million Canadians living abroad obtained their citizenship by descent.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thanks. The University of Toronto has made a conditional offer to pro-Palestinian demonstrators camped out there for about 3 weeks. The president says the deal hinges on students tearing down the unauthorized encampment.
Given the duration of the encampment and the growing strain on our community, it's time to bring this encampment to an end. The students have been given 24 hours to consider this offer.
He says the offer addresses all the protesters' demands on divestment, disclosure of investments, and academic ties. Protesters have demanded it sever financial ties with the Israeli government and call for a ceasefire in Gaza. London Drugs confirmed today what was feared. Files stolen by cyber criminals last month have been leaked onto the dark web. Cyber criminals breached company computers in a ransomware attack. London Drugs closed all its stores in Western Canada at one point. A group called Lockbit claimed responsibility and threatened to release stolen data unless London Drugs paid $25 million. The company says it's unwilling and unable to pay. Customer and patient databases, it says, were not affected. Employees may have been, and they're getting free credit monitoring services and identity theft protection. A severe storm hits an election rally. Coming up, the deadly collapse in Mexico. This terrifying scene happened at an election rally in Mexico last night. A huge gust of wind caused the stage to collapse. 9 people were killed, including a child. More than 100 others were injured. A presidential candidate was on stage at the time. He was not hurt, but he's now suspended all his campaign events. There were warnings about a severe thunderstorm, strong winds, hail, and the possibility of tornadoes at the time. In Mexico's south, howler monkeys are dying by the dozens in an intense heat wave. A conservation group says more than 130 howler monkeys have been found dead in recent weeks. Many simply fell from trees as temperatures surpassed 45 degrees Celsius. Volunteers and veterinarians are trying to help monkeys suffering from dehydration, bringing bottles of water, fruit, and even IV drips. Multiple howler monkey species in Mexico are already considered vulnerable or endangered as human activity threatens their populations. Taiwan has put missile, naval, and land units on alert because of full-scale Chinese military drills underway around the island nation. That's Taiwan's Coast Guard telling a Chinese vessel to leave, saying it severely undermines the peace and stability of Taiwan Strait. China calls the military exercises strong punishment for the self-ruled nation's so-called separatist acts. In his inauguration speech on Monday, Taiwan's new president called on China to accept the existence of its democracy. Growing the game ahead, the excitement for Canada's first WNBA team. New video was released today, nearly a week after the arrest of pro golfer Scottie Scheffler outside the PGA Championship. Louisville police released footage of the arrest from two different cameras. A security camera and a police dash cam provide new angles, but the altercation between Scheffler and the arresting officer is largely obscured. There's no police body cam footage because the officer did not turn on his device.
We understand the seriousness of the failure to capture this interaction, which is why our officer has received corrective action for this policy violation.
Scheffler was arrested last Friday after he allegedly failed to follow police orders while arriving at the PGA Championship. A pedestrian had been killed and police had stopped traffic. Scheffler is facing several charges, including second-degree assault of a police officer. It is official. The WNBA is coming to Canada. The Women's Professional Basketball League confirmed today its latest franchise will be in Toronto. That team will hit the court in 2026. And as Mike Armstrong reports, basketball fans in 3 Canadian cities will get a chance to watch in person.
Toronto, welcome to the W.
It's somewhat ironic the shortest person on the stage has been a giant when it comes to basketball in Canada. Larry Tannenbaum was instrumental in bringing the NBA to Toronto, and now, almost 30 years later, he's doing the same with the WNBA.
Many say women's sports is having a moment. I disagree. Women's sports has arrived. It is a movement. The world is finally taking notice of something that's been there all along.
It wasn't always so. Tammy Sutton-Brown played 12 years in the W and remembers the early 2000s when the league struggled to get exposure and the players barely made ends meet.
The salaries, can we just start there? The salaries are a lot different. I think they're making probably 2, 3, 4 times what we made back in our days.
Today, one of the hottest and most marketable athletes on the planet, Caitlin Clark, is set to begin her WNBA career as the league celebrates attendance, broadcast, and fan engagement records.
When I joined the league, I think we had 80 games of our over 200 on national platforms. Last year, we had 205 of our 240 games on national platforms. If you build it, they will come.
Absolutely, yes.
I thought it was fake news, but we here, man, we here.
There's certainly a buzz around women's sports that we haven't seen before. That, in turn, is changing the way sports marketing experts think.
I credit them for saying this is not only the right thing to do, but it's a business decision. And the time is now and perhaps overdue to bring women's sport in this country.
The team's home base will be in Toronto, but they'll also play in Vancouver and Montreal. And yes, they'll be accepting input on the team name and colors from the public. But with first tip-off not until 2026, they have time to enjoy this historic day.
Do hereby proclaim May 23rd, 2024 as WNBA Day in the city of Toronto.
Mike Armstrong, Global News, Toronto.
Canadian superstar Celine Dion has a new documentary coming out about her life. It's said to be a raw and honest look at the struggles she's faced dealing with a life-altering illness. Here's a clip from the trailer.
I'm working hard every day, but I have to admit, it's been a struggle. I miss it so much. The people, I miss them.
In 2022, Dion was diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological disorder. It causes muscle rigidity and painful spasms that progress over time. She canceled her world tour a year ago. Dion calls the film a love letter to her fans and hints at a return. It will stream on Prime Video at the end of June. Next, Canada's last hockey team standing. Are you ready to join the Oilers bandwagon? The puck dropped today for Game 1 of the NHL's Western Conference Final. The Edmonton Oilers are in Texas taking on the Dallas Stars and are the last Canadian team with a chance at the Stanley Cup. I've talked to a few Canucks, Jets and Leafs fans who say, no way, no chance, they are not going to cheer for the Oilers. So are the Oilers really Canada's team? Heather Yurix-West looks at the state of the playoff bandwagon from Calgary.
It's a dinosaur.
You'd have to go back to 1993. The year dinosaurs ruled the box office. And Whitney Houston topped the charts. to find the last time Lord Stanley's Cup was raised by a Canadian team.
There's a growing number of Canadian hockey fans, myself included, that haven't been alive to see a Canadian team lift the Stanley Cup.
But maybe 2024 is Canada's year. The Edmonton Oilers keeping hope alive.
Yeah, I mean, McDavid and the boys are making a run for it. It's awesome.
The Oil has its hometown support, but its bandwagon is growing with every round. Even Vancouver fans are jumping on.
I am a huge Canucks fan, but at this point, we're rallying behind the Canadian team.
For sure, yeah. Any Canadian team. Just want to bring the cup back to Canada.
In Calgary, the heart of enemy territory,
let's go!
You see a lot of orange and blue.
We've been blessed. We've been a full house every single night for the Oilers games. It's our sport, so it's very important. Canadians want to see a Canadian team get through.
Among the Oilers squad, 16 out of 20 players call this country home. But before Edmonton can again be the city of champions and make Canada proud, it'll need to get past Dallas, and round 3 will be a tough fight.
A lot of it is rest versus rust. The Oilers are coming off of that intense 7th game against Vancouver, so they might be feeling a little bit beat up after that, where Dallas has been off for almost a week after downing Colorado in 6.
Oilers fans still have a long way to go.
But the Flames, well, they didn't even make the playoffs. And of the 4 teams left in the hunt for Stanley, only 1 Canadian team remains. So for this year, and this year only, go Oilers go. Donna?
You did it. Heather Yurix, West in Calgary, thanks. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this old family farm in Ajax, Ontario. Thanks for watching. Farah Nasser will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I'll see you again in a little bit. Bye-bye.